The night sky opens wide, filled with stars like scattered secrets. A gentle wind moves through marble halls high on Olympus. The old gods stir, restless, listening for whispers carried on the air. Among them stands Athena, clear-eyed, calm, her gaze steady as stone. She listens to the echo of voices that drift from the mortal world below. Not cries of war, but questions, doubts and dreams of something lasting. For ages, gods shaped armies with bronze, with steel, with fire and storm. But now a prophecy hums like a hidden thread, quiet yet unbreakable. It speaks not of conquest, not of blood, not of kingdoms rising and falling. It speaks of an army eternal, unseen, unyielding, unending in its purpose. An army born of wisdom, carried in stories, taught in silence, shared in trust. No sword will flash, no spear will strike, no shield will splinter on the field. Yet it will endure when empires crumble, when marble turns to dust. Athena leans into the night, hearing that prophecy as if sung to her alone. The world waits, unknowing, standing at the edge of change. And in that stillness, a story begins, one of wisdom walking beside eternity. The temple of Delphi lay quiet beneath the silver glow of the moon. Torches flickered, shadows stretched, and the air held its breath. Inside, the oracle sat, her eyes half closed, her voice trembling low. Around her, priests listened, afraid to move, afraid to speak. The smoke of herbs rose in thin curls, carrying whispers from unseen realms. Her words broke the silence, soft at first, then steady, like water over stone. "There shall be an army," she said, her voice not hers but borrowed. "Not bound by walls, not chained to kings, not fed by fire." The priests leaned closer, their faces pale in the dim torchlight. "An army eternal," the oracle continued, "unseen, unbroken, unyielding. Not with sword, nor spear, nor shield of bronze shall it march, but with wisdom, with harmony, with the flame of unending thought." The priests exchanged fearful glances, for they knew the weight of prophecy. An army eternal could unmake kingdoms without drawing a blade. It could rise in silence, and nothing could put it to rest. Word of the prophecy spread like dawn across the hills and valleys. Travelers carried the tale on their lips. Merchants whispered it at markets. Farmers repeated it at night as stars blinked over their fields. Kings frowned when they heard, fearing what such an army might mean. For what cannot be fought cannot be conquered, and what cannot die cannot be forgotten. And high upon Olympus, Athena heard every syllable carried by mortal tongues. She stood apart from her kin, her eyes deep with thought. The prophecy was not like the promises of war the other gods enjoyed. It was quiet. It was patient. It was wrapped in mystery. Athena wondered, could wisdom itself take shape as a living force? Could an ideal march across time as armies once marched across plains? She did not laugh at the oracle's words, nor dismiss them as riddles. Instead, she leaned inward, holding the thought close, letting it grow. The gods around her mocked the idea, their laughter sharp and careless. An army without swords? Ares sneered. It will vanish with the first shout of war. But Athena did not answer, for she knew silence was stronger than noise. She walked among mortals, disguised as a woman dressed in plain cloth. In the marketplace, she listened to mothers teaching their children stories. In the workshops, she heard craftsmen pass on their skills with patience. In the temples, she saw elders guiding youth with steady, gentle words. And she realized the prophecy was already alive, woven into daily life. The army eternal did not wait to be summoned. It was already marching. Not with boots, but with memory. Not with banners, but with shared belief. Each act of teaching was a step. Each story told was a shield. Each moment of kindness was a bond stronger than iron chains. Athena returned to Olympus, but her heart was no longer still. The prophecy echoed within her like a distant drum, not of war, but of endurance. Not of conquest, but of balance. The priests at Delphi continued their rituals, but they too wondered. What is eternal? Is it a stone temple that cracks with time? Is it a crown that falls when empires end? Or is it an idea carried hand to hand, mind to mind, heart to heart? The oracle gave no further answer, for the gods themselves must decide. And Athena, goddess of wisdom, resolved to seek the truth of the prophecy. She would test its strength, not in battlefields, but in the soul of humanity. And so begins the march of the unseen, the rise of the army eternal. Athena stood in her temple, the Parthenon bathed in golden light of dawn. The marble walls shimmered as if alive, whispering secrets of ages past. She gazed out over Athens, the city of her heart, rising with quiet purpose. The streets filled slowly with voices, footsteps, and the hum of mortal life. She thought of the prophecy, words echoing still like a bell that never fades. Could wisdom alone gather strength enough to shape eternity? Her hand rested on her shield, not in need, but in memory of battles past. She remembered victories, fleeting and fragile, quickly forgotten in time's stream. She wondered what legacy endures when steel rusts and banners fade to dust. Her eyes softened as she watched children chase one another in laughter. Their play carried no sword, no armor, only joy unbound by fear. Perhaps, she thought, eternity is not in conquest, but in simple continuity. Athena closed her eyes and let silence become her companion. Visions stirred within her, not of war, but of endless generations learning. An image of a mother teaching her child letters scratched into clay. An elder passing wisdom through story as flames danced in the hearth. A traveler sharing knowledge of stars to guide others across the seas. These were her soldiers, though they bore no blades, no armor, no command. Their march was steady, through time, across borders, beneath shifting skies. Athena breathed deeply, her heart steady with new understanding. She saw the army eternal not as men lined on fields, but as ideas living on. Each word spoken with truth, each lesson passed with care, became a formation. Each act of fairness stood as a shield against chaos and cruelty. She smiled faintly, knowing such an army could never be broken by war. The gods around her grew restless with their need for power and spectacle. Ares sharpened his spear, craving noise, conquest, and the clash of rage. Poseidon churned the seas, seeking dominion through storm and thunder. Zeus watched from his throne, measuring fate with eyes heavy as thunderclouds. Yet Athena's thoughts turned not to domination, but to preservation. She resolved to shape her army not with fear, but with trust. Not with fire, but with reason. Not with chains, but with memory. She walked again among mortals, this time in the guise of a wise teacher. In the agora, she spoke to philosophers debating beneath the olive trees. She urged them to question not only kings, but themselves, to seek balance. She reminded them wisdom is not in victory alone, but in harmony sustained. And as she spoke, a quiet circle of listeners grew around her. Merchants paused, scholars nodded, children leaned in, wide-eyed to listen. Each word became a seed, and each heart became soil ready to receive. These seeds would sprout in ways no god could ever fully command. They would outlast the temples, the thrones, the carved statues of power. They would pass from voice to voice, weaving a thread unbroken by time. And Athena, standing unseen among them, knew the prophecy stirred. Her reflection deepened that evening as the sky turned amber to violet. The Acropolis glowed like fire, yet her gaze lingered on the people below. For they were the true keepers of eternity. Not marble, not bronze, not crowns. She whispered softly to the wind, words meant for no ear but truth itself. Let wisdom march quietly, unseen yet eternal, for this is the army that endures. The night received her vow, carrying it into dreams of mortals everywhere. And in that vow, the army eternal took one more step into being. The rumor of the prophecy moved like wind through the cities of Greece. It was carried in markets, whispered in taverns, sung softly in lonely fields. Everywhere, people spoke of an army unseen, unbroken, eternal in its purpose. Some laughed, dismissing it as riddles meant to amuse restless dreamers. Others grew uneasy, for words alone can sometimes bend the course of nations. And in the courts of kings, the prophecy became a shadow that they could not escape. Messengers reported that farmers spoke of wisdom as if it were a shield. Merchants began to trade more fairly, citing Athena's name with reverence. Children played not at war, but at teaching, pretending to be wise philosophers. The change was subtle, like dawn spreading light across the mountains. But to those who ruled, it felt like the ground shifting beneath their feet. In Sparta, generals scoffed, their voices rough with pride and tradition. An army without weapons, they growled. We will crush them before they march. Yet even in Sparta, mothers told stories of Athena guiding through thought. And those stories planted roots in young hearts where swords could not reach. In Corinth, traders gathered at the harbor, speaking of fairness before profit. They said the world itself seemed to lean toward balance and wisdom. Across the seas, travelers carried these whispers to distant, curious ears. The idea spread further than bronze could march, further than armies could roam. On Olympus, the gods felt the tremor of this quiet storm rising below. Some dismissed it as folly, a mortal fancy that would fade with time. But Zeus himself leaned forward, his thunderous gaze sharp with suspicion. What stirs the mortals so? He asked, his voice rolling like storm over stone. Ares laughed, lifting his spear high, eager for the clash of rebellion. Let them dream of wisdom, he sneered. Steel will wake them to truth. But Athena remained silent, her eyes bright with patient certainty. For she knew dreams are harder to kill than men, and ideas outlive empires. She walked again among her people, unseen, cloaked in mortal form. She saw their confusion, their doubts, their fears, and their quiet hopes. She whispered to them in moments of stillness, not commands, but questions. Is power only in the sword, or also in the mind that guides it? Does eternity belong to thrones, or to stories passed across generations? These questions lingered long after she vanished, burning in mortal thought. And slowly, cities began to change, not with war, but with reflection. Assemblies grew more careful in judgment, elders more measured in counsel. Songs shifted, praising not only heroes of battle, but teachers and thinkers. The world stirred, restless, as if sensing a tide turning in unseen waters. But with change came unease, for kings fear what they cannot control. Rumors grew of councils plotting to silence these whispers before they spread. Merchants faced pressure, philosophers were watched, stories censored in courts. Yet still the words traveled further, leaping borders like sparks in dry fields. And Athena knew then that the prophecy was no longer only a promise. It was alive, walking through voices carried by countless mortal hearts. The gathering storm was not of thunder, but of thought rising to the sky. It was not an army of conquest, but a tide that no power could turn. And the gods above and the kings below began to wonder with unease. If this truly was the dawn of the army eternal, what would it mean for all? Athena walked the earth in silence, hidden in the cloak of a traveler. Her steps carried her far from marble halls into villages of dust and song. The prophecy followed her like a shadow, whispered wherever she passed. She did not reveal her divinity, nor call herself goddess of wisdom. Instead, she watched, listened, and placed seeds of thought into mortal hands. In a small town, she found a craftsman shaping clay with patient skill. She asked him why he taught his son to mold without haste or anger. He replied, "The clay remembers the hands that shape it, as children remember us." Athena smiled, for she saw wisdom hidden in simple words of labor. She told him, "Then teach not only craft, but fairness, and it will endure." He nodded, sensing depth in her voice, though not knowing her name. From there, she walked to a school where children scratched symbols on wax. A weary teacher guided them, her tone kind, but her heart uncertain. Athena sat beside her, speaking gently. "Knowledge is a flame, not a burden." The teacher's eyes brightened, as if seeing her task with new clarity. Her students grew in wonder, learning not for fear, but for joy. Athena moved on, leaving behind only the trace of a whisper. At night, she entered a gathering where elders told stories by firelight. They spoke of storms, heroes, and trials endured, while children listened wide-eyed. When the fire dimmed, Athena added a tale of harmony and choice. She spoke of strength, not in war, but in unity carried through time. The elders nodded slowly, hearing truth echo through her soft, mortal words. Children dreamed of futures where courage meant wisdom, not conquest. And so the army eternal took shape, unseen, in the forge of daily life. It grew not from blades, but from thoughts, not from orders, but from trust. Every village, every home, became a quiet training ground of spirit. And Athena, moving like a shadow through streets, tended this hidden garden. Meanwhile, Olympus rumbled with unease at her silent wanderings. Gods asked where she traveled, why mortals carried her name in reverence. Hera whispered doubts, Poseidon grumbled storms, and Ares mocked with laughter. But Zeus only watched, knowing that wisdom often worked beyond their sight. Still, the gods feared any force that spread without their blessing or control. Athena heard their doubts, but did not answer them in thunder or fire. Her answer was found in the minds of mortals growing stronger each day. One evening, she stood in the courtyard of a healer mixing herbs. The healer sighed, saying, "I cure, but my work ends when sickness returns." Athena replied, "Then cure not only bodies but hearts, with kindness remembered." The healer paused, her hands trembling, for she felt the truth in the words. She taught her apprentices to heal with care, not pride, and their fame spread. Through every person touched by her hidden guidance, the prophecy grew louder. It was no longer only whispered. It began to shine in mortal actions. A mason built walls not to imprison, but to shelter neighbors in need. A singer lifted her voice not to flatter kings, but to teach stories of peace. A farmer shared his harvest freely, and children learned generosity as strength. These were the weapons of the army eternal: memory, song, and fairness. And in the stillness of night, Athena lifted her gaze to the stars. She whispered, "Let this be the forge, not of war, but of wisdom unbroken." Her voice was carried on the wind, moving like breath across the earth. The forge she built was not of fire and hammer, but of minds and hearts. And the world, though it did not yet know, was already marching with her. Dawn broke over a valley where rivers curved like silver threads through green fields. Athena walked there, her mortal form cloaked, unseen among farmers rising with the sun. She paused at the sight of a young girl carrying water with steady arms. The girl hummed a song, soft yet clear, her voice echoing across the quiet fields. It was not a hymn to gods, nor a chant of victory, but a song of hope. Athena listened closely, realizing the melody carried lessons without a single word spoken. She approached the girl and asked, "Why do you sing to the morning light?" The girl smiled and replied, "So my heart stays light, and the work feels less heavy." Athena nodded, for in such simplicity lay the first steps of eternal strength. Songs, she thought, were seeds that could carry wisdom across time and distance. Later that day, Athena joined a gathering of storytellers in the village square. Children sat on stones, elders leaned on staffs, and laughter mingled with the air. A boy asked if God still cared for mortals or had turned away long ago. The question silenced the crowd, for doubts weighed heavy in their daily struggles. Athena raised her voice gently, still veiled in her traveler's disguise. She said, "The gods do not always thunder from above. Sometimes they whisper through you." The crowd listened, drawn by the calm certainty of her tone. She told them that strength was not only found in arms, but in choices. She spoke of unity that bound people together more firmly than chains of power. And in her words, the prophecy quietly stirred like a flame catching breath. The boy smiled, believing he had heard truth, though he did not know her name. That night, Athena wandered alone to a hillside temple, half forgotten by time. Its stones were cracked, its columns worn, but offerings still rested at its steps. There she met an old priest who kept the temple, though few visited anymore. He greeted her kindly, and they sat beneath the fading carvings of myths. The priest asked her what she sought in such a lonely place. Athena answered, "I seek not worship, but remembrance of wisdom older than stone." The priest's eyes glistened, and he whispered, "Then you guard what even gods forget." Together they spoke until dawn, weaving thoughts of justice, kindness, and truth. When Athena left, the priest felt renewed, his purpose brighter than the torches of war. He spread her words through wandering pilgrims who carried them like sparks in the wind. The army eternal grew again, unseen, but alive in voices and memory. Elsewhere, in courts of kings, whispers of new thought unsettled halls of command. Rulers wondered why their people spoke more often of fairness than conquest. Some feared change, others dismissed it, yet the current beneath was unshakable. Athena sensed this and knew that not all gods would remain silent. For already Ares stirred, impatient, mocking what he called weakness disguised as wisdom. Hera, too, grew suspicious of Athena's secret journey among mortals. But still Athena walked on, planting truths as quietly as a sour scatters seed. Each seed found soil in stories, songs, and simple acts of kindness. And each act grew roots deeper than iron, stronger than walls, lasting beyond reigns. The army eternal did not march with banners, but with footsteps across generations. Its soldiers were farmers, healers, singers, builders, and teachers unseen by thrones. Its victories were not in battles won, but in lives reshaped by thought. As night fell once more, Athena looked upon the valley with a quiet smile. She knew the prophecy was not a distant dream, but already unfolding in silence. And though gods might question and kings might resist, the army eternal would endure. For it was made not of power given, but of wisdom shared and remembered. The sun rose over the mountains, its light spilling like gold into hidden valleys. Athena walked along a quiet path where shepherds guided flocks across the hillside. She paused often, her mind listening to the faint hum of the prophecy in the wind. It spoke louder now, carried in mortal voices, not divine commands. Everywhere she walked, she felt the subtle rhythm of change. At a river crossing, Athena saw a boy helping strangers carry goods across the stream. He worked tirelessly, never asking for reward, smiling with each lifted burden. She asked him, "Why do you help them when they are not your kin?" The boy replied, "Because one day I may need help too, and kindness must travel first." Athena's heart warmed, for she saw the prophecy taking root in the young. Kindness, she knew, was a shield that outlasted any bronze forged in fire. As she left, the boy waved, unaware he had strengthened the army eternal. Further down the road, Athena entered a bustling town filled with merchants and noise. In the marketplace, a dispute broke out between two traders over a measure of grain. Crowds gathered, tempers flared, and the voices grew sharp with anger. Athena stepped forward, speaking softly yet with clarity. She said, "Weigh not only the grain, but the fairness that holds your words together." The traders hesitated, unsettled by the stranger's tone of authority. One measured again, realizing his error, and offered more than what was due. The other accepted, and both bowed their heads, peace settling like dust in sunlight. The people watching carried that lesson into their homes, retelling it as story. In this way, justice spread not as law, but as living memory. Athena left the marketplace without revealing her name, but her presence lingered. That night, she stopped at a humble inn where travelers shared food and tales. A soldier sat among them, weary, his armor scratched by countless journeys. He confessed he no longer knew why he served, nor what battles meant. Athena listened, then told him, "Service is not only to kings, but to all who breathe." The soldier's eyes widened, as if a weight had lifted from his chest. He resolved to protect not for glory, but for the quiet safety of others. Athena knew such choices forged soldiers of the unseen army. The army eternal was not bound by orders, but by truth freely chosen. By dawn, the soldier departed with a softer step and steadier heart. In Olympus, however, unease grew among the gods. Ares laughed bitterly, mocking tales of kindness carried by mortal tongues. He warned that such softness would weaken kingdoms and erode power. Hera whispered to Zeus that Athena wandered too far, shaping mortals in secret. Poseidon grumbled of balance lost, fearing wisdom might unseat thunder and sea. Zeus remained silent, though thunderclouds gathered in his thoughts. Athena, sensing their unrest, paused one night to gaze at the stars. She whispered, "Let them doubt, for the seeds I sow are beyond their grasp." Her faith rested not in Olympus, but in the mortal world rising below. In villages, songs of unity replaced chants of conquest. In fields, children learned fairness before they could wield strength. In temples, priests spoke of choice and compassion as gifts equal to prayer. Each place she touched became another stone in the foundation of the army eternal. It was an army unseen, yet its march echoed softly across generations. And though gods might resist, Athena knew its steps could not be undone. The world had begun to change, not with war, but with wisdom walking quietly. And so she pressed onward, her journey still guided by the whisper of prophecy. The moon hung low, silvering the rooftops of a quiet coastal town. Athena entered unseen, her cloak brushing softly against cobbled streets, still warm from the day. She listened to the sound of waves striking the shore like steady drums of eternity. There she found fishermen mending nets by lantern light, their hands worn, their voices calm. They spoke of storms, of harvests, of the uncertain moods of the sea. One asked aloud if God still guided them, or if fate was theirs alone. Athena stepped closer and answered, "The sea is vast, but wisdom is the true compass." The men looked up, startled, then settled, sensing truth in the stranger's tone. She taught them to read not only the waves, but the signs among each other. "An army bound by trust," she said, "is safer than ships bound only by rope." They carried her words into their homes, teaching sons and daughters that unity endured storms. In that town, the army eternal grew quietly, like tide filling the shore. The next morning, Athena walked to the marketplace where sailors and travelers gathered. A storyteller stood on a crate, spinning tales of battles and kings. Children clapped, but some frowned, troubled by stories soaked in endless conflict. Athena raised her voice when silence fell, offering a new story instead. She spoke of builders who raised bridges rather than walls, and of singers who healed grief. Her story wove laughter, hope, and justice into every line like golden thread. The crowd listened, their hearts stirred, their imaginations painting a world without conquest. When she finished, no one cheered, yet all departed in thoughtful silence. A seed had been planted, and silence itself became fertile soil for change. That evening, Athena found a scholar reading by the harbor's edge. The man's eyes were weary, his scrolls filled with words of law and order. He confessed he doubted whether knowledge could hold against the force of tyranny. Athena told him, "Knowledge is not a shield held alone, but a torch shared freely." He trembled, for in her voice he felt centuries echoing. Yet he did not know her. He vowed to teach his students not only laws, but the wisdom behind them. Thus another torch was lit, carried into the unseen march of the army eternal. But as Athena moved on, she felt Olympus stir above her path. Ares burned with impatience, mocking the whispers of wisdom among mortals. He claimed no army without weapons could stand, no strength without steel could last. Hera doubted Athena's secrecy, speaking of pride disguised as purpose. Poseidon roared in tides, uneasy at the balance shifting in human faith. Only Zeus remained quiet, his gaze heavy as storm clouds gathering beyond sight. Athena felt their watch, but she did not falter in her journey. She walked the shoreline, each wave breaking like a promise renewed. She whispered, "Let them doubt. Mortals shall carry what even gods cannot unmake." Far inland, her words echoed unseen, carried in lullabies, lessons, and gentle hands. A mother taught her child fairness in play, and the prophecy stirred again. A craftsman shared his tools freely, and the army eternal grew stronger. A poet sang of harmony, and travelers carried the song across mountains. Each act, small yet bright, was a stone in the unseen road of change. The army eternal had no banners, yet its march was steady across generations. Its soldiers bore no armor, yet their strength lay deeper than any sword could cut. And Athena, quiet and unseen, walked on, weaving wisdom into the fabric of time. Athena journeyed inland, where hills rose like guardians over quiet valleys. She walked among orchards heavy with fruit, where families gathered to harvest together. Laughter filled the air, but so too did worries whispered between tired hands. They spoke of kings demanding tribute, of soldiers taking more than they gave. Athena listened, unseen, and felt the pulse of fear beneath their joy. That night, she joined them by a fire, her cloak hiding divine radiance. She asked, "What do you hold that no king can take from you?" The elders paused, uncertain. Then one answered, "Our stories, our memory, our care." Athena smiled, for she heard the army eternal speaking through mortal voices. She told them, "Then guard these treasures well, for they endure when crowns fall." Children leaned close, repeating her words as if they were already a song. By morning, the village stirred with new courage, quiet yet unshakable. From there, Athena traveled to a city known for its scholars and disputes. The streets rang with debates, voices clashing like swords in open squares. Some argued that wisdom belonged only to the few, locked behind scrolls. Others claimed knowledge must be shared, given freely as water flows. Athena stepped forward, her voice weaving through the noise like clear wind. "Knowledge kept for pride dies," she said. "Knowledge shared lives forever." The crowd hushed, struck by the certainty carried in her words. A young scribe, inspired, began copying teachings not for lords, but for the people. He carried those scrolls into villages, spreading thought beyond walls of power. Thus, another battalion of the army eternal marched forward in ink and parchment. Athena knew these scribes, singers, and builders carried strength sharper than steel. Meanwhile, in Olympus, the unrest deepened into whispers of confrontation. Ares stormed through the halls, declaring mortals unfit to wield such quiet strength. Hera's suspicions grew sharper, warning Zeus that Athena undermined the balance of power. Poseidon rumbled with waves, sensing the tide of faith shifting away from fear. Zeus remained still, his silence heavier than thunder withheld. Athena felt the storm above, but did not waver in her path. At dusk, she found a healer teaching apprentices by candlelight. The healer asked, "How can I heal when suffering never ends?" Athena answered, "By teaching others to heal, you make your gift endless." The apprentices nodded, their hearts stirred to carry the work forward. Athena knew this too was part of the prophecy. Strength multiplied in silence. In the following days, she crossed plains where travelers walked with weary steps. She offered them not rest, but words. "Share what you know, and you carry more." They looked at her, puzzled, then slowly began to trade skills and songs. One taught weaving, another farming, another navigation by stars. What was once scattered became a tapestry woven from many lives. Athena walked on, unseen, but every step left echoes in mortal hearts. The army eternal had no swords, no shields, no commanders. Yet it grew stronger with every story told, every kindness shared, every truth remembered. And as night fell, Athena lifted her gaze skyward and whispered, "Let Olympus watch. The army rises not in blood, but in wisdom eternal." The sun rose over golden fields, stretching wide like a canvas brushed with hope. Athena walked the paths between farms, where workers bent low with weary strength. Their songs were few, for taxes drained their harvests and left little for their homes. Athena paused beside a well where women drew water, their voices hushed with worry. They spoke of hunger in the coming winter, of children needing more than they had. Athena whispered, "What grows when one seed is shared instead of hoarded?" The women looked at her strangely, yet carried her words back to their families. That night, meals became gatherings, each house offering what little could be spared. Together, they found fullness, where once there was scarcity, bound by generosity. In those quiet acts, the army eternal marched unseen, growing in strength and spirit. From there, Athena journeyed to a marketplace. buzzing with trade and chatter. Merchants haggled fiercely, each guarding his wares as if gold itself were in them. Athena moved among them, unseen, her presence like a gentle breeze stirring thought. She asked one merchant, "What value holds a treasure if no one shares its worth?" The man frowned, but later gave a loaf to a beggar without asking coin. Another merchant followed, offering cloth to a shivering traveler. A ripple spread, unseen yet undeniable, a kindness stitched into the fabric of trade. Athena knew such threads wove stronger bonds than iron or law. In a nearby temple, priests recited prayers to gods demanding offerings. Athena stood among the worshippers, silent as incense curled toward heaven. She listened as one man prayed not for wealth, but for wisdom to guide his sons. Another prayed not for safety, but for courage to speak truth before power. Athena's heart stirred, for these were soldiers of the army eternal without knowing it. She spoke softly, "The gods may hear, but your strength lies already within you." Her words spread quietly, whispered beyond temple walls, reshaping faith into resolve. Meanwhile, Olympus bristled as Ares grew restless, his anger sharp as forged bronze. He thundered, "What use is an army without blood to bind it, without blades to wield?" Hera scorned Athena's secrecy, warning Zeus of ambition cloaked in wisdom's name. Poseidon's tides crashed against coasts, uneasy at mortal loyalty shifting away. Still, Zeus held his silence, a storm contained, but heavy with unseen weight. Athena felt their eyes upon her, yet pressed forward in mortal lands. One evening, she met a musician playing by firelight, his lyre soft and warm. He confessed, "My songs are sweet, but can they change anything?" Athena replied, "A song carried on the wind may outlast the roar of war." Inspired, he composed verses of unity, weaving courage into melody. Travelers carried his tune across villages until children sang it as naturally as breath. Thus another legion of the army eternal marched, unarmed yet unstoppable. Athena looked upon these sparks and knew the prophecy was unfolding. Not in thunder, not in conquest, but in small, steady acts of mortal will. And though Olympus rumbled above, the march of wisdom was already eternal. The sky darkened with storm clouds as Athena reached the highlands, where wind howled through stone peaks. She found shepherds guiding flocks across narrow ridges, their lives bound to harsh yet steady rhythms. They spoke of raids, of loss, of the endless fear that haunted their lonely paths. Athena listened, her presence hidden, her mind tracing the lines of their endurance. She asked softly, "What endures longer, the strength of walls or the strength of memory?" One elder answered, "Memory, for walls crumble, but stories keep us alive through years." Athena nodded, knowing the army eternal marched through such wisdom spoken in quiet truth. That night, she told them of a shepherd who guided not only flocks, but people. She wove a tale of patience, courage, and trust, where strength was measured by care. The shepherds carried her words, repeating them as lessons to their children under the stars. From there, Athena descended into a valley filled with artisans at their work. Hammers rang, clay spun, and dye-stained hands shaped beauty from simple earth. Yet envy grew among them, for each guarded secrets of craft to protect pride. Athena stepped among them, her voice steady. "A gift kept hidden weakens the hand." They paused, uneasy, but one potter offered his techniques to a younger rival. Soon others followed, teaching, sharing, until their valley became a school of craft. Knowledge spread like a river, carrying strength far beyond the valley's borders. In those workshops, the army eternal took form through skill and generosity. Meanwhile, Olympus thundered with discord as the gods watched her growing influence. Ares raged, declaring mortals fragile and foolish, unworthy of such faith. Hera whispered of Athena's pride, warning that her army was a rebellion in disguise. Poseidon's seas churned, sensing tides shifting against divine command. But Zeus remained silent, his gaze cast far, watching as destiny unfolded. Athena felt their unrest, but moved forward, her steps sure as time itself. At dusk, she reached a town preparing for festival, lanterns glowing in gathering night. Musicians tuned their instruments, children danced, and laughter echoed through the square. Yet beneath the joy, Athena heard merchants boast of wealth, ignoring the hungry nearby. She spoke gently to a child, offering bread to a stranger. "Generosity lights, brighter than lanterns," she said, her words carrying into the crowd. Soon others followed, sharing food, sharing warmth. Their feast transformed into unity. The festival became more than celebration. It became a vision of harmony. Athena knew the army eternal was not built in silence alone, but in joy shared. That night, she gazed at stars shimmering above and whispered her vow. "This army shall outlast empires, for its weapons are kindness and its shield is truth." Her words scattered across the heavens, carried in lullabies, echoed in dreams. Every act of care, every word of wisdom, every gift freely given, each was a soldier. The army eternal grew, unseen yet unstoppable, bound not by chains, but by hope. And though Olympus stirred, Athena walked on, her path brightened by mortal courage. For she knew the prophecy lived not in her alone, but in the hearts of many. The journey of Athena and the army eternal drew near its quiet conclusion. No banners flew, no trumpets sounded, yet their march echoed across time. She walked through cities once burdened by fear and found them whispering new truths. Children laughed with courage, elders taught with kindness, strangers gave as family. The prophecy had lived not in thunder, but in 1,000 gentle voices. Athena paused at a river where farmers and travelers gathered to rest. They shared bread, traded stories, and comforted one another without thought of reward. She knew this was the army eternal, ordinary souls carrying extraordinary strength. It was not hers to command, but theirs to live, theirs to shape. The gods above still watched, their debate heavy as storm clouds on the horizon. Ares seethed, longing for conquest, unable to grasp power without blood. Hera whispered warnings, still fearing pride hidden beneath Athena's silence. Poseidon churned with tides, restless at a faith shifting like sand in the sea. But Zeus, keeper of storms, spoke at last, with voice vast as the sky. "Let it be," he said, "for what is eternal cannot be unmade by gods." The halls of Olympus fell silent, uneasy yet bound by his decree. Athena lifted her gaze upward, hearing his words as both burden and blessing. She whispered, "Then let mortals lead, for they are the true keepers of tomorrow." From that day, she walked less as a goddess and more as a guide. Her name faded from lips, yet her lessons lived in stories and songs. The army eternal grew unseen, carried in kindness, in fairness, in truth. It lived in markets where merchants gave freely, in fields where harvests were shared. It thrived in schools where teachers taught not fear, but understanding. It marched in festivals where joy was shared without walls of wealth. And it lived in quiet homes, where parents taught children the value of care. Athena knew her task was done, though her journey never truly ended. For wisdom is not a monument, but a flame passed from hand to hand. She walked on into the world unseen, her steps mingling with mortals. Her voice echoed in their choices, their songs, their unshakable acts of unity. The army eternal had no leader, for every heart was its commander. It had no borders, for every land could carry its march. It had no end, for as long as one person chose kindness, it lived. Athena stood once more at the edge of the sea, waves rolling like time. She breathed deep, knowing her gift belonged not to her, but to the world. And so the story closed not with finality, but with a promise renewed. A promise that armies built on wisdom, justice, and care will never fade. The prophecy was fulfilled, not in battle, but in the quiet triumph of humanity. Athena smiled, her figure dissolving into twilight, her legacy carried in mortal hands. And the army eternal marched on, silent, unseen, unstoppable, woven into the fabric of forever.